I was halfway through brushing my teeth when my phone rang. It was 3:17 a.m., the kind of hour that only exists for emergencies, regrets, and news that permanently splits your life into before and after. I remember staring at the screen, watching my uncle's name vibrate against the bathroom mirror. My stomach dropped before I even answered. No one calls at that hour unless something is terribly wrong. Hello? My voice sounded wrong to my own ears, thin, already breaking. There was a pause, breathing, heavy, like he was rehearsing. "Lena," he said finally, "it's your mom." Everything in my body went cold. "What about her?" Another pause, longer this time. I could hear someone crying in the background. A woman, not my aunt, someone older. "She passed away tonight." I gripped the sink so hard my knuckles went white. The room tilted. Toothpaste foam dripped onto my wrist, unnoticed. "What do you mean, passed away?" I asked. "She was fine yesterday. I talked to her yesterday." He cleared his throat. "It was an accident. Prescription meds. They found her in her apartment." My heart started pounding so loud I could barely hear him. "My mom doesn't do drugs," I said. "She barely even drinks. She triple checks Tylenol labels." "I know, honey, I know," he said, voice syrupy now. "But sometimes people hide things. You never really know what someone's going through." I felt something shift inside me then. Not grief yet, not even anger. Suspicion. "I want to talk to the doctor," I said. Another pause. "That won't be necessary. Everything's already handled. We're taking care of arrangements. You shouldn't have to worry about anything right now." Handled. That word would haunt me later. "I'm coming home," I said. "You don't need to rush," he replied. "We'll call you in the morning with details." I hung up without responding. I stood there for a long time, staring at my reflection. My face looked the same, but something behind my eyes had changed. My mother, my meticulous, stubborn, endlessly careful mother, dead from an overdose? No, that wasn't grief talking. That was instinct. By the time the sun rose, I was already on the road. I didn't pack properly, just threw clothes into a duffel, grabbed my laptop, and left my apartment in a blur. The drive felt unreal, like the world had turned flat and distant. Every mile closer to my hometown tightened the knot in my chest. My mom's name was Rebecca Hale, 48 years old, a nurse for over 2 decades, the woman who taught me how to read prescription labels, who scolded neighbors for sharing meds, who once grounded me for taking a painkiller without asking. An overdose. It didn't fit, not even a little. When I pulled into my grandparents' driveway, the house was already full. Cars lined the street, curtains drawn, the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just heavy. Inside, everyone looked at me like I might shatter. My Aunt Marissa rushed forward, pulling me into a hug that felt more like restraint than comfort. "Oh, sweetie, you must be in shock." "I want to see her." Her arms stiffened. "She's already been taken to the funeral home. It's better you remember her as she was." I stepped back and looked around. My Uncle Daniel stood near the kitchen, speaking in low tones with my cousin Tyler. My grandmother sat on the couch, clutching tissues, eyes red but dry. Too dry. "Where's her apartment key?" Daniel turned sharply. "Why?" "I want to see where she died." He exchanged a glance with Marissa. "There's nothing to see. The police already cleared it. It was straightforward." Straightforward. Another word that didn't sit right. "She lived alone," I said. "Someone had to find her." Daniel nodded. "Marissa went to check on her when she didn't answer calls." Marissa smiled faintly. "I just had a bad feeling." I studied her face. Perfect makeup, not a tear-smudged mascara line in sight. "What time?" I asked. "Late evening, around 10. "What made you go?" I pressed. "I told you. A feeling." I nodded slowly. I didn't believe her. The funeral was set for 3 days later, closed casket, for dignity. they said. They also said my mom's will had already been located. That's when my suspicion hardened into something sharper. We sat around the dining room table that night, papers spread out neatly, too neatly. My uncle cleared his throat. Rebecca named Daniel and me as executors to make things easier. For who? I asked. For you, Marissa said quickly. You're grieving. You shouldn't have to deal with legal stuff. I flipped through the papers. Something felt off immediately. My mom never told me about this. She didn't want to burden you, Daniel replied. Did she change it recently? Another pause, another glance. Yes, he admitted, about 6 months ago. 6 months ago, right around the time my mom mentioned family tension on the phone, right around the time she said Marissa had been helping her manage finances. I want a copy, I said. Of course, Daniel replied, but it's all standard. It wasn't. The house, my childhood home, wasn't mentioned. Her savings were split in ways that made no sense, and my share was smaller than expected. Where's the life insurance? I asked. Marissa answered this time. She named Tyler as a beneficiary. My cousin's head snapped up. What? Daniel shot her. I mean, she named multiple beneficiaries. It's complicated. My hands were shaking now. My mom would never leave me out of that. Never. Daniel's tone hardened. Are you accusing us of something? The room went silent. I'm saying none of this makes sense, and until it does, I'm not signing anything. Marissa sighed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Lena, she said gently, you're in shock. That can make people paranoid. Paranoid. There it was. That night, I went to my mom's apartment. They hadn't changed the locks yet. The place smelled like lemon cleaner, too clean. My mom was tidy, but not like this. The trash was gone, the counters wiped, the medicine cabinet half empty. I opened drawers, checked under the sink, looked everywhere. Then I found it. Her pill organizer, still full. Every compartment labeled in her neat handwriting, morning, evening, empty where it should be empty, full where it should be full. No missing pills, no chaos, no sign of an overdose. My chest tightened. I opened her laptop next. Password unchanged. She never was good at digital security. Her browser history was short, too short. Someone had cleared it. But not perfectly. One search remained. Symptoms of insulin poisoning. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. My mom wasn't diabetic. She didn't have insulin in her apartment. But I knew who did. Marissa. She'd been managing my grandmother's medications for years. A nurse, with access. I sat on the floor, my back against the couch, and let the truth settle in. They hadn't just lied. They'd planned this. And if they thought I was going to quietly accept an overdose story and walk away, they didn't know me at all. That was the moment I stopped being a grieving daughter and became a witness. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my mom's couch until dawn, laptop open, pill organizer beside me like evidence in a trial only I knew was coming. Every sound outside made me flinch. Every passing car felt like a warning. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't leaving without answers. The first call I made was to the county medical examiner's office. Hi, I said, forcing my voice steady. My name is Lena Hale. My mother, Rebecca Hale, was brought in last night. I'd like to request the full autopsy report. There was a pause, keys clicking. I'm sorry for your loss, the woman said gently. But according to our records, the family already authorized cremation. There won't be a full autopsy. My heart slammed into my ribs. What? I said. Authorized by who? Her brother, Daniel Hale. I felt dizzy. I'm her daughter, I said. I was never consulted. I understand, she said carefully, but legally, next of kin can make arrangements. In this case, paperwork was filed quickly. Quickly. Too quickly. Has she been cremated yet? I asked. No, she replied. It's scheduled for tomorrow morning. Tomorrow. I hung up and immediately called Daniel. He answered on the third ring, voice calm, too calm. Lena, he said, I was just about to check on you. I just spoke to the medical examiner, I said. Why did you authorize cremation without telling me? A beat. We didn't want to burden you. You're grieving. No, I snapped. You didn't want an autopsy. That's not fair, he said sharply. The doctor's already confirmed overdose. Dragging this out won't bring her back. You don't get to decide that, I said. She's my mother. Legally, he said, I do. I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. Cancel the cremation, I said. Now. Silence. That's not happening, he replied. Everything's already arranged. I will go to court, I said. I will stop it. You're emotional, he said. Think about what Rebecca would want. I am, I replied coldly, and she would want the truth. He hung up. I stood there shaking, then grabbed my keys. If they wanted to move fast, I'd move faster. The courthouse opened at 8:30 a.m. I was there at 8:05, sitting on the steps, rehearsing what I would say. I filed an emergency injunction to halt cremation pending autopsy review. The clerk looked skeptical until I explained the circumstances. By noon, a judge had signed the order. Cremation halted. I called the medical examiner back. Proceed with a full autopsy, I said, immediately. That afternoon, the family found out. Marissa showed up at my mom's apartment unannounced. I was in the kitchen when I heard the knock, sharp, aggressive. I opened the door and there she was, arms crossed, jaw tight. How dare you, she said. Hello, Marissa, I replied calmly. You had no right to interfere. We're trying to give Rebecca peace. Peace doesn't come from burning evidence, I said. Her eyes flashed. You're accusing us of something, she said. I'm asking questions, I replied. If you're innocent, you shouldn't be afraid of answers. She stepped inside without waiting for permission. You're spiraling. Grief does that. It makes people see conspiracies. I gestured to the pill organizer on the table. Then explain that, I said. She glanced at it briefly. Looks normal, she said. Exactly. No missing pills, no overdose. She scoffed. Doctors know more than you. My mom was a nurse. She knew more than most doctors. Marissa's lips tightened. You're disrespecting the dead. Rebecca wouldn't want this. You didn't know her like I did, I said quietly. She froze for half a second. Then she smiled, a slow, calculated smile. You think you're smarter than everyone else, but you're just a little girl who doesn't want to accept reality. Something in me snapped. You were Googling insulin poisoning. Her smile vanished. What? Her laptop, I continued. Someone searched it. Her face went pale for just a moment before she recovered. Coincidence, she probably read an article. She didn't have diabetes, but you do. Her eyes flicked away. You're done here. Daniel will deal with you. She left without another word. That night, the autopsy began. I wasn't allowed in the room, but I waited in the hallway for hours. When the medical examiner finally emerged, his expression was serious. Miss Hale, we found something concerning. My heart stopped. There were elevated insulin levels in your bloodstream, far beyond therapeutic range. I swallowed hard. She wasn't prescribed insulin, I said. No, which means it was introduced externally. My hands started shaking. So it wasn't an overdose? I whispered. No, it was poisoning. I closed my eyes as tears finally fell. Not just grief, vindication. The police were notified immediately. By morning, detectives were interviewing family members. Daniel tried to act shocked. Marissa cried, loudly, dramatically. But cracks formed quickly. Security footage from my mom's apartment building showed Marissa entering the night she died. She claimed she hadn't gone inside. Phone records showed her phone pinged near the apartment for over an hour. And then there was the will. A forensic document examiner confirmed the signature on the updated will didn't match my mother's handwriting. forgery. Everything was unraveling. The breaking point came when Tyler cracked. He was brought in for questioning late that night. He was young, nervous, unprepared. "They told me it was just to scare her," he sobbed. "They said she was being stubborn, that she wouldn't change the will." "Who told you?" the detective asked. "My mom," he whispered, "and my dad." I sat in the observation room, my fists clenched. "They said she'd wake up, that it was a small dose, but she didn't." Small dose. My mother died terrified and alone because they wanted money. Marissa was arrested the next morning. Daniel followed hours later. As they led her in handcuffs, she looked straight at me. No remorse, just hatred. I met her gaze without flinching. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The first headline appeared before sunrise. Local nurse's death sparks family feud. Daughter disputes overdose ruling. I stared at my phone, my stomach twisting as I scrolled. By noon, the story had mutated. Grieving daughter accuses aunt of murder, police investigating. They used words like unstable, emotional, in denial. One article quoted an anonymous family source claiming I'd always had a strained relationship with my mother. Another suggested I was motivated by inheritance. I knew exactly where that was coming from. By the time I arrived at the police station that afternoon, reporters were already waiting outside. Cameras swung toward me like predators sensing blood. "Lena, is it true you stopped your own mother's cremation? Are you accusing your aunt of killing her sister? Do you regret going public?" I kept my head down and walked past them without a word, heart pounding. Inside, Detective Alvarez met me in a small interview room. He looked tired, the kind of tired that came from dealing with people who lied for a living. "They've hired attorneys," he said without preamble. "Both of them." "I expected that," I replied. "They're claiming your mother was depressed, that she self-administered insulin." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "She wasn't diabetic. She didn't have insulin. They're saying she obtained it illegally, that you're projecting guilt." My jaw tightened. "They're trying to bury her twice, once with poison, once with lies." He studied me carefully. "We need more," he said. "The insulin proves homicide, but intent is harder, especially when it's family." I leaned forward. "What kind of more?" "Direct evidence, something that ties Marissa to administering the dose or proves premeditation." I thought of the wiped browser history, the forged will, Tyler's confession. "And the recording?" I asked. He shook his head. "Tyler's statement helps, but his attorney's already pushing coercion. They'll say he's lying to protect himself." I closed my eyes. There was something else. I could feel it, something I'd missed. That night, I went back to my mom's apartment again. This time, I didn't rush. I moved slowly, deliberately, like I was walking through a crime scene instead of my childhood memories. I opened the hall closet. That's where she kept old things, boxes of photos, paperwork she couldn't bring herself to throw away. I found a small lockbox on the top shelf. I'd never seen it before. The key wasn't taped nearby like she usually did. That alone set my nerves on edge. I pried it open with a screwdriver, hands shaking. Inside were documents, bank statements, a burner phone, and a notebook. My mom's handwriting filled every page. Dates, times, names. Marissa, Daniel. Notes about pressure, arguments, requests to change will. One entry made my breath hitch. "Marissa brought insulin today, said it was for Mom. I told her absolutely not. She got angry, said I was being selfish." Another 3 days before her death. "If anything happens to me, Lena needs to know I did not overdose. I am scared." My vision blurred. She knew. She'd been afraid, and she'd tried to protect me. I picked up the burner phone. It was still charged. One unread voicemail. I pressed play. My mom's voice filled the room, shaky but clear. "Lena, if you're hearing this, something's gone wrong. Marissa and Daniel have been pushing me hard about the will. I think they're capable of hurting me. Please don't believe anything they say about drugs. I love you. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." I sank to the floor, sobbing. Then I wiped my tears, because this was what they needed. The next day, Detective Alvarez listened to the voicemail in silence. When it ended, he exhaled slowly. "This changes things," he said. "Is it enough? For an arrest?" He said, "Yes. For a conviction, almost." Almost. Marissa was released on bail 2 days later. She held a press conference outside her attorney's office. I watched it on TV, my nails digging into my palm. My sister-in-law was deeply troubled. We tried to help her. "Lena is grieving and lashing out. We forgive her." Forgive me? The audacity made my blood boil. Daniel stood beside her, silent, eyes downcast, playing the broken man. They were building a narrative. So I built one too. I went public. I released the voicemail. I released the notebook. And I told my story, not as a headline, not as a scandal, but as a daughter. I sat in front of a camera and spoke calmly. My mother was a nurse. She knew medications. She feared for her life. She documented that fear, and she trusted me to speak if she couldn't. The video went viral overnight. Comments flooded in, support, rage, people sharing similar stories. Elder abuse, financial coercion, family betrayal. The narrative shifted. And then something unexpected happened. A woman contacted me through email. She said she used to work with Marissa. She said she had something to confess. We met in a quiet cafe 2 days later. She was shaking. "I quit because of her," she said. "She asked me once how much insulin it would take to put someone to sleep, permanently." My heart stopped. She laughed it off, but it stuck with me. I recorded everything. When detectives followed up, they found more. Marissa had searched lethal dosage charts on a work computer. Deleted, but not completely. The trial date was set, and as I sat in the courtroom on the first day, watching Marissa avoid my gaze, I realized something. She thought this was about money, about winning. She never understood what she was up against. She wasn't fighting a system. She was fighting a daughter who refused to let her mother be erased. And I was just getting started. The courtroom smelled like old wood and recycled air. I noticed it the moment I walked in, like my brain was grasping for something concrete to hold on to before everything spun out of control. The benches were already half full. Reporters, strangers, people who had decided my mother's death was entertainment. Cameras clicked until the bailiff barked at them to stop. I sat behind the prosecution table, hands folded tightly in my lap, my mom's notebook tucked inside my bag like a talisman. Across the room, Marissa sat perfectly still. She wore a navy blazer, hair smooth, makeup flawless. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was attending a board meeting, not standing trial for murder. Daniel sat beside her, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the floor. He hadn't looked at me once since the charges were filed. I wondered if he felt shame or just fear. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The room fell silent. And just like that, the fight for my mother's truth officially began. The prosecutor opened with facts, clean, precise, dates, times, medical evidence, insulin levels incompatible with life, no prescription, no medical need, forced administration. When he said my mom's name out loud, Rebecca Hale, my chest tightened. She was no longer just my mother. She was evidence. Marissa's attorney followed with emotion. He painted my mom as fragile, overworked, secretly depressed, a woman hiding pain from her daughter. He looked directly at me when he said it, like he was daring me to object. She was a nurse, he said. She had access, knowledge, means. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat still, because I knew what was coming. The first witness was the medical examiner. He explained the autopsy findings slowly, carefully, as if speaking to children. He described injection sites, bruising inconsistent with self-administration, insulin injected at an angle that suggested force. Marissa didn't flinch. Then came the surveillance footage. The grainy video played on the screen. Marissa entering my mom's building at 9:42 p.m., leaving at 10:38. Her attorney stood. She was checking on her sister-in-law, he said, concerned, loving. The prosecutor nodded calmly. And how often did she check on her? Silence. Because phone records show she never visited before that night. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Daniel was called next. He took the stand slowly, like each step weighed 100 pounds. He claimed ignorance, claimed he trusted his wife, claimed he believed my mom was unstable. Then the prosecutor pulled out the notebook. "Is this your sister's handwriting?" he asked. Daniel squinted. "Yes," he whispered. "And this entry?" The prosecutor read aloud. "Marissa brought insulin today. I told her no." Daniel's hands trembled. I don't know why she'd write that." "Perhaps because it happened," the prosecutor said evenly. Daniel broke then. He started crying, loudly, gasping, the kind of crying that demands attention. "I didn't mean for her to die," he sobbed. "Marissa said it would just make her sleep. She said we could scare her into signing the papers." My heart pounded. Marissa turned toward him sharply. "What are you saying?" she hissed. The courtroom erupted. The judge slammed the gavel. "Order." Daniel kept talking. "She was supposed to wake up," he cried. "I didn't want this." Marissa stared straight ahead, face frozen. Daniel's confession changed everything. By the time he stepped down, the room felt different, heavier, like gravity had shifted. Then it was Marissa's turn. She took the stand with her chin high. She denied everything. Denied the insulin, denied the will manipulation, denied the voicemail. She smiled when she spoke about my mother. She was unstable. She needed help. Lena just couldn't see it. I stood up before I realized I was moving. "Objection," the prosecutor said immediately. "Speculation." Sustained. Marissa's smile faltered for the first time. Then the prosecutor played the voicemail. My mom's voice echoed through the courtroom. "I am scared." I watched Marissa's hands curl into fists. The final blow came from the former coworker, the woman who'd emailed me. She testified about Marissa asking lethal dosage questions, about her laughter afterwards. Marissa snapped then. She stood up, shouting, "This is all lies. She's poisoning them against me." The judge ordered her restrained. As they led her away, she finally looked at me. Pure hatred, but also something else. Fear. The verdict came 2 days later. Guilty, on all counts. Marissa collapsed, screaming as officers cuffed her. Daniel was found guilty of conspiracy and coercion, lesser charges. Still, prison. I didn't cry, not then. Sentencing was set for a month later. In that time, the world kept spinning. People moved on, news cycles changed, but I stayed frozen because winning didn't bring my mom back. On the day of sentencing, the judge allowed victim impact statements. I walked to the podium with my mom's scarf wrapped around my wrist. My mother was not weak. She was cautious, kind. She trusted family. That trust was used against her. I looked directly at Marissa when I said it. You didn't just kill her. You tried to erase her. You tried to turn her into a lie. But you failed. Marissa was sentenced to 25 years. Daniel received 10. As the courtroom emptied, I stayed seated because grief finally caught up to me. And for the first time since that 3:17 a.m. phone call, I let myself feel it. Not rage, not determination, just loss and love, and the quiet promise that my mother's voice, her real voice, would never be silenced again. The silence after the trial was louder than anything I'd lived through before. No sirens, no reporters, no courtroom murmurs, just quiet. The kind of quiet that creeps into your bones once the adrenaline fades and leaves you alone with what's left. I went back to my apartment 2 days after sentencing, the same place I'd abandoned in a panic weeks earlier. My suitcase was still half unpacked, clothes wrinkled, life paused mid-breath. I stood in the doorway for a long time, unsure how to step back into a world that hadn't known my mother the way I had. People assumed justice brought closure. It didn't. Justice brought space, and space brought grief. I stopped waking up at 3:17 a.m., but I started waking up at 5:42, the time my mom used to text me good morning before her shift. My phone stayed silent, every day. And every day that silence hurt more than the screaming ever had. Cards arrived in the mail, messages from strangers, women telling me my story gave them courage, daughters, sons, nurses, elderly parents. I read every one, but none of them filled the empty chair in my kitchen where my mom used to sit, sipping coffee, pretending not to worry about me. 3 weeks after sentencing, I got a call from the assisted living facility where my grandmother lived. "Miss Hale," the administrator said gently, "your grandmother has been asking for you." I hadn't visited her since the trial ended. I was afraid of what she might say, afraid of what she might not remember, afraid she'd look at me and see only loss. I drove there the next morning. She was sitting by the window when I arrived, a blanket over her knees, hands folded neatly like she was waiting for an appointment she didn't want to miss. Her hair was thinner than I remembered, her face softer, older, but her eyes were sharp. "You took your time," she said as soon as she saw me. I laughed despite myself. "I'm sorry," I said, kneeling beside her chair. "I didn't know what to say." She reached out and took my hand. "You did what your mother couldn't," she said quietly. "You spoke." I swallowed hard. "She knew," my grandmother continued. "She tried to warn me." My head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "She told me Marissa scared her," she said. "Said she felt watched, pressured." I didn't believe it at first. Guilt washed over her face. "I should have," she whispered. I squeezed her hand. "You were being controlled too," I said. "She handled your meds, your appointments." My grandmother nodded slowly. "She gave me pills that made me sleep. Said the doctor increased my dosage. I didn't question it." My stomach turned. When Marissa was arrested, the fog lifted, literally. I started remembering things again. She leaned closer. "There's something else," she said. My heart began to race. "She came to see me the night your mother died." I froze. "She told me Rebecca had finally agreed that everything was taken care of. She said, 'It's over.'" My chest tightened. "She wasn't talking about paperwork," I whispered. My grandmother shook her head. "No," she said. "She was talking about your mother." I sat there long after she stopped speaking, the weight of it settling over me like a final stone. Even after conviction, the truth was still unraveling. That night, I went home and opened my mom's notebook again. This time, I didn't read it like evidence. I read it like a daughter. Notes about me, about my childhood, about dreams she never chased because she wanted stability for us. Scribbled reminders to call me, to remind me to eat vegetables, to tell me she loved me. At the very back, one final entry caught my eye, written in darker ink. If I don't make it, I hope Lena learns this. I was not afraid of dying. I was afraid of being forgotten. I trust her to remember me correctly. I pressed the notebook to my chest and cried harder than I had at the funeral. Weeks passed. Life resumed in awkward, uneven steps. I returned to work. I smiled when people spoke to me carefully. I learned how to exist as someone whose story was public property. Then the letter arrived. It was from prison, from Daniel. I didn't open it right away. I stared at the envelope for 3 days, letting it sit on my counter like a question I didn't want to answer. Finally, I tore it open. Lena, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I let greed and fear turn me into someone my sister would be ashamed of. Marissa didn't just manipulate Rebecca, she manipulated me. But that doesn't absolve me. I made choices. I think about her every night, about how alone she must have felt. I will live with that for the rest of my life. Daniel. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. I didn't respond. Some wounds don't need words. A month later, Marissa appealed. Of course she did. Her lawyer argued procedural errors, emotional bias, media influence. The judge denied it. She screamed when she heard the ruling, threw a chair, had to be restrained. I heard about it secondhand. I felt nothing, because by then, my life had shifted in a way I didn't expect. People started reaching out for help, not interviews, help. A woman whose mother's caregiver had drained her bank account, a man whose father was pressured into signing over property, a nurse who suspected abuse but didn't know how to report it. I realized something then. My mom's story wasn't rare. It was just usually silent. So I did something she would have done. I organized. I partnered with a local legal aid group, then a medical ethics board. We created workshops, hotlines, clear reporting steps for healthcare workers. We named it after her, the Rebecca Hale Project. The first seminar filled an entire community center. When I stood at the podium, I felt her with me, not as a ghost, as a force. My mother trusted family, I told the room. That trust was weaponized, but her story doesn't end in violence. It ends in awareness. Applause filled the room. I didn't bow. I didn't smile. I just breathed. 6 months later, I visited my grandmother again. She looked stronger, clearer, more herself. "They can't touch me now," she said with a small smile. I smiled back. "No," I said, "you've got yourself." As I drove home that day, I realized something quietly profound. Justice didn't give me closure. Purpose did. And my mother, my careful, loving, brave mother, didn't die as an overdose statistic. She became a warning, a voice, a line no one else would have to cross alone. And somewhere in that quiet space between grief and meaning, I knew this wasn't the end of her story, just the beginning of what it would protect. The box arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. No return address, just my name written in familiar handwriting, slanted slightly to the right, careful, deliberate. My mother's handwriting. My breath caught so sharply it hurt. I stood in the hallway of my apartment for a long time, the package resting against my thigh, afraid that if I moved too fast, it might vanish. My hands were trembling when I finally set it on the kitchen table. Inside was a smaller wooden box, the kind my mom loved, simple, practical, indestructible. Taped to the lid was a yellow sticky note. For Lena, only when everything is over. My vision blurred. Everything was over. The trial, the appeals, the noise, the lies. I peeled the tape back slowly, like opening something sacred. Inside were 3 things. a flash drive, a sealed envelope, and a folded piece of paper that simply said, "Start with the video." I plugged the drive into my laptop. The screen flickered. Then my mom appeared. She was sitting at her kitchen table, the same one where she used to drink tea and quiz me about my day. She wore her favorite gray sweater. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, eyes tired but steady. She smiled softly at the camera. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. I broke. I covered my mouth, tears streaming, my body folding in on itself as if it had been waiting for this moment to finally let go. "I don't know when you'll see this," she continued gently, "but if you are, it means something went wrong, and for that, I'm so sorry." She took a breath. "I want you to know this first. I was not afraid in the end. I was prepared. I suspected Marissa. I suspected Daniel. I hoped I was wrong, but hope isn't protection." My hands shook so badly I had to grip the edge of the table. "If you're watching this, it means you were brave enough to question the story they told. That doesn't surprise me. You've always been stronger than you realize." She smiled again, sadder this time. "I made arrangements, not because I expected to die, but because I refused to be silenced." The video cut to a screen recording. Legal documents, accounts, dates. "I placed most of my assets into a trust under your name, one that cannot be accessed or altered without a court order. I knew they'd go after the will. I wanted them to expose themselves trying." My breath caught. "They thought they were winning," she said softly, "but greed always reveals itself." The video returned to her face. "If Marissa hurt me," she said, voice steady but eyes shining, "it won't be because I was weak. It will be because she underestimated love, especially a daughter's." I pressed my forehead to the screen, sobbing. "And Lena," she added, leaning closer, "don't let this harden you. Anger has its place, but it shouldn't be your home. Justice isn't revenge, it's truth, spoken clearly." The video ended. I sat there in silence, the hum of my refrigerator the only sound anchoring me to reality. Then I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. Not long, just enough. "My dearest Lena, if you're reading this, you did exactly what I hoped you would. You listened to your instincts. I'm so proud of you, it hurts. I need you to understand something important. What happened to me was not your responsibility to carry forever. You don't owe forgiveness to anyone who hasn't earned it, but you owe yourself peace. Live loudly, love fully, and don't be afraid to trust again. I will always be with you. Mom." I held the letter to my chest and breathed for what felt like the first time in months. That night, I slept without nightmares. Not because the pain was gone, but because the truth was complete. Weeks later, I visited the cemetery alone. I brought fresh flowers, sunflowers, her favorite. I sat on the grass beside her grave, the earth warm beneath me. "I did it," I whispered. "You were right. They told on themselves." The wind stirred the leaves. For a moment, I could almost hear her laugh. "I miss you," I said, "every day." I didn't ask for signs. I didn't beg for comfort. I just sat there, letting love exist alongside loss. Before I left, I placed the wooden box at the headstone just for a moment, then took it back with me. Some things weren't meant to stay buried. Life didn't magically become easy after that, but it became honest. The Rebecca Hale Project expanded beyond anything I imagined. Hospitals adopted our protocols, nursing programs used my mom's story in ethics training. Laws changed, slowly, imperfectly, but they changed. I testified once, standing in front of lawmakers, my voice calm. I said, "This isn't about one woman. It's about believing people when they're afraid." Afterwards, an older man approached me. He said, "My daughter saved me because of your work." I smiled through tears. That night, I called my grandmother. "She'd be proud," she said simply. "I know," I replied. Daniel was eventually transferred to a lower security facility. He never wrote again. I heard he volunteered in the infirmary, that he spoke about accountability. Marissa remained exactly who she was. She never apologized. She never admitted guilt. And she never mattered again. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't a gift you hand to someone else. It's something you give yourself when you're ready to stop carrying their weight. On the anniversary of my mom's death, I woke up at 5:42 a.m. out of habit. I smiled. Then I made coffee and sat at the table where she once recorded that video, sunlight spilling across the wood. "I'm okay," I said out loud. "I promise." And I was. Not because the story ended neatly, but because it ended truthfully. My mother was not an overdose. She was not a cautionary tale wrapped in lies. She was a woman who loved fiercely, planned carefully, and trusted that her daughter would finish the sentence she couldn't. And I did. If you're reading this and something feels wrong in your own family, listen to that feeling. If someone tells you not to ask questions, ask louder. And if love puts you in a position to protect the truth, don't look away. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is refuse to accept the story you're given. And sometimes, justice sounds like a daughter saying, "She mattered, and I remember her exactly as she was."